Hello everyone, this is my research on sustainability for the urban environment. We are aiming to recycling and reusing human settlements in peripheries and historical center. My name is architect Jorge Javier, professor and researcher at Universidad Anáhuac, Querétaro. I want to start quoting Tadao Ando that says that architecture not only mirrors the time, it must also offer criticism of the times. It represents an autonomous system of thought. In order to realize that we must go further and we must realize about what we are doing with our own urban environment today. This presentation shares a documentary analysis that identified the conditions necessary for sustainable urban development in Mexico and then in the nearby zone in Querétaro and their impact on absorbing globalization's effects. This research proposes mitigation measures such as recycling and reusing public spaces, unused land, and buildings to address gentrification and existing availability changes. This study integrates technology within the urban context to measure the impact of new urban master plans and their adjustments for future developments. The objective is to enhance efficiency in urban planning, project execution, and city construction while aligning with international environmental goals. With these findings, we contribute to a body of knowledge that inform urban design strategies through integrated architectural proposals and urban acupuncture. These approaches aim to create more sustainable and resilient cities. Within this framework, we have this methodology with a set of categories that help identify the essential elements for guiding urban and architectural development. The approach addresses key questions: what, how, and for whom the best strategies, options, and proposals should be formulated. In this case, we always take an urban problem around a not so crowded urban cities. We realize what about is happening with the site and create an analysis. Thus, it's divided into historical background, built natural context, demography, economy, mobility, accessibility, and future developments. For us to have a bigger scope of what the results of the diagnosis will be, to set a simple variations out of it, to have a proposal, to create a discussions, and then have our first conclusions. These conclusions will also have a review and then share our results with another set of variations to create an urban proposal and then an architecture proposal that create acupuncture and then use this recycle system all over the cities. Within this methodology of cities and their planning with the historical background, we need to understand what has been happening throughout this zone in Mexico. Because we have some sort of complex history since the 1930s, because we have expanded irregularity toward peripheral areas, with rapid growth accelerating due to economic crisis since the late 1990s up to this date. Also, uncontrolled urban expansion has led to challenges in accessibility, service distribution, bike and lawn usage, and traffic congestion. Municipal and regional urban developments plan now emphasize optimizing land use, repurposing infrastructure, and adapting cities to accommodate new economic and commercial activities. Despite this, periodic review of 6-year development plans and urban stress persists due to uncontrolled real estate expansion. This highlights the need for community awareness and strategic planning to promote re-densification and sustainable urban reorganization. Such as this example of Querétaro from 1985, the first slide, to 2024, the last one. We can see the expansion of the city from being a city of less than 200 square kilometers to a bigger than 800 square kilometers. We're dealing too with sustainable design and intervening in urban environments, built a natural context. We're quoting Miguel Ruano, Eco-Urbanism, emphasizing the development of multidimensional sustainable communities. However, we must understand that the application of this principle has been inconsistent due to political and socio-economic variables. Then, moving forward to 2014 with ecological urbanism of Mostahavi and Doherty, they argue that urban spaces should foster dialogue and inclusion. Applying with this perspective, research in the Querétaro region has examined urban growth, densification, recycling, and the reuse of spaces. The goal is to propose urban acupuncture strategies that integrate specific architectural projects and master plan to enhance social cohesion and accessibility. With this framework, we can see about the logistic range and the productive regions within all this framework around the country. And we are located right in the middle, in the center, right around what we call it the belly of the country. And for that, we must understand that urban growth has to do this simple process for densification, then with recycling the spaces to understand the real public space that can be generated as a master plan. So we must go forward like a good spiral and a virtual cycle of it. We must have habitability and comfort, analyzing urban centers that require assessing climate and sun exposure, prevailing winds and material usage, on historical knowledge, because we must understand what has been done before. As Ignacio de Solar Morales stated in 1996, the modern architecture often lacks places of refuge, turning monuments into fragmented archaeological remnants. Then, urban intervention should prioritize usability, fostering a sense of belonging and long-term engagement with the built environment. Also, as Jose Maria Montaner quoted in 2022, advocates for an inclusive approach to architecture and urbanism that reflects diverse population and context, integrating gender equity and holistic social development. As such, we must understand that all these urban interventions, we must have a public space, a proper location, the proper usability, the sense of belonging for everyone, and then the proper use of materials to avoid polluting and transporting things that comes from out of scope. We must take into account the energy efficiency as water and waste management. As such, we must use smart lighting with durable urban furniture, public platforms for tracking urban progress and challenges, recycling waters and treatment as much as possible for all the growing supply-demand crisis, and of course, try to recovery of rivers and banks in the area to decontaminate and create new public spaces around it. As such, we must understand how to recycle with all these technological features that we have today, how to use it to create energy, how to reuse the water, how to recycle our own spaces, and then create a better world with this urban development, as well as architecture projects that enhance the use of the city. Then we need to have an architectural integration. Within this study, we need to identify deteriorated buildings and underutilized spaces suitable for revitalization. With the analysis, community engagement through public consultations ensures that urban renewal aligns with local needs, and key considerations include establishing a mixed-use development to enhance livability and work opportunities, expanding sustainable mobility options such as cycling, electric scooters, and public transit networks, and prioritizing long-term planning to ensure lasting urban improvements within the proposed projects. As such, we need to stand certain goals for this sustainability, as guarantee active and multidisciplinary collaboration that creates replicable models based on the needs of each region, regardless of its historical context, and a series of innovations that will generate a standard for common well-being, investment, innovation, and sustainability. Then, urban and architectural recycling. Addressing the global housing crisis and combating gentrification, we require innovative reuse strategies for abandoned structures. We recommend promoting, again, mixed-use developments to revitalize underutilized streets, balancing the real estate supply, and then enhancing public infrastructure to have schools, healthcare centers, and parks to improve the quality of city life. Within all this framework, we have to understand that there is hope that new inhabitants will integrate into the existing environment and restore the socio-economic consolidation and condition of these public spaces, but with the improvements that this intervention entail. Last, we must understand that we must go beyond our smart cities concept and focusing on efficiency and connectivity towards sustainability, to avoiding current urban planning efforts that prioritize other things but infrastructure over pedestrians and cyclist needs. We need to develop polycentric urban models that decentralize services, enhance our pedestrian-friendly networks, and then gather everything under studies for empirical assurance to measure urban flow and improve strategic planning. Within this, we will have cities that will face systems and measurements and could be applied into cycling, public transport, and pedestrians. So, with these proposed strategies and findings, the next research aligns with the existing urban regulations while proposing innovative strategies to improve livability and public space utilization. We recommend to include the enhancing pedestrian accessibility by integrating green corridors, revitalizing urban nodes by repurposing neglected spaces into community hubs, and then improving public lighting and safety measures to promote inclusive urban development. Within, we have an array of projects that they are the result of this analysis in these territories. And within this, we have an improvement into habitability and the use of public spaces. We have identified the needs for the future development of each region and each study zone. The first one, called Tesela, name derived from the Latin word to have tessellation, focus on sustainability of this urban environment around the Marqués place, understanding the real problems that gather about noise, sound, habitability, nearby extension of the urban problems. And all the students happen to find a suitable component in the urban master plan that gather everything and create a network that would serve for the future in a moment that we need to have a better transport and pedestrian spots in the area that are largely out of context, away from Querétaro. This is one of the final results with all the projects within markets and hospitality services. The next one, called La Negreta, it's a derelict part of the city that used to be an agricultural settlement. Now we are proposing to get rid of the gentrification that has been forced around it, because this part of the city is right in the border with another state, and then have a proper urban development for the people to recreate their economic and social status. Within this frame, they created a health system in between, education system, and some other acupunctural projects that revitalize the whole zone into a better place for living. And this is one of the sketches of the final proposals that were developed, reminding that this project was developed during the pandemic. The next one was called Node, in one of the most conjunction parts of the city, having a lot of traffic and with a very divisive highway in the middle of the city that created this some sort of underdeveloped neighborhood And the students find out that by interacting and recycling a lot of these plots into productive projects such as libraries, artisan schools, work incubators, parks, it could create a better and sustainable future for the social environment, creating housing for women and creating a place for immigrants in the zone. And this is part of the final presentation with the model of all these projects. Another one that was quite a challenging master plan was Suma. Part of the analysis showed that this derelict part of the city was in between productive and industrial zones, but a very with a very need of creating a better sustainable social core, because this is some sort of historical site. So we needed to focus on the economy and social development of the place, and then use the rails that set apart these two inhabitants' place to create a greener and large park, linear park, for them to use and then have a better project that link all the uses with the market, with an addiction center, with housing for the elderly, and then some education spots for the companies to hire all the inhabitants of the city. And this is part of the presentation with the final model and how they created this great proposal with this analysis. One of the greatest analyses that they created then is asymptote or asymptota in Spanish, about restructuring one of the most forgotten places in the city of Querétaro, right beside one of the largest and most important streets in here. And then by recycling all this land around to avoid the bad use along the railways, to enhance habitability with offices, with sports centers for disabled people, with housing for women, students, and entrepreneurs, and a recycle center, as well as a community center to help them improve the way of life around what they have been creating as a master plan by repurposing the streets and creating new connections inside of it. And this is part of the final results with all these projects presenting to citadels about how they manage to work all these things. Then we translated this analysis to a place called Bernal, one of the most famous stones around, Colsigno. It's a Otomi word. And they created a link towards sustainable tourism, as well as sustainable economic background for the people of the town, finding that they needed to have a productive market, a school for arts and crafts in there, and some transport hubs for them to enhance accessibility in the zone. And this is the final presentation, integrating all this part within this marvelous landscape. We then moved to Tequisquiapan, one of the historical center that is called the belly of the country, because that's the geographical center, at least officially. And understanding that this town has gathered some sort of heritage status and called as Magic Pueblo or Magic Town, because of a history that has been growing since 1530, with the main square standing still as one of the main core of the city, but forgetting what's been happening around. Most of it forgetting what has been happened to the main river. And then part of the project and the master plan was identifying this recycling system by reuse all the sport facilities, create housing, create health system, and create tourist infrastructure for everyone to set a proper territorial ordainment for them and have a better sustainable future for the town. And this is part of the final presentation of that analysis, how they created this rearrangement of the urban zone. One of the last projects was Tani, a project located in the north part of the municipality called Chichimequillas, a place of conjunction because it was in an historical route, the gold route that is called Camino Adentro. And they realized that this has been a forgotten place, so they created a new commercial infrastructure, enhancing accessibility and enhancing a new way of productivity for the people to have an equity and equally gender attraction for commercial and development of these goods like wine and the market that surrounds all the places. Within this, they restore the history of the hacienda and they created a large integration with new features within this marvelous framework in the highway. So, as a conclusion, we have visiting sustainable urban planning that must inspire long-term paradigm shift beyond political cycles. Cities must evolve dynamically, prioritizing safety, health, and economic opportunities for residents. The cities can ensure sustainable growth by shifting away from short-term economic models and embracing inclusive data-driven urban planning, achieving equitable development that requires fostering shared benefits and long-term community engagement. And I'm pleased to say that most of these projects has been shared with municipality governments and some of them are undergoing some reviews to be applied as peripheral projects for the future.